Coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles, we continue to recap a heartbreaking Super Bowl 57 loss from the Eagles to the Chiefs. We'll get into it on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the NFL and now the Locked On Podcast Network. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. The season is officially over. Locker room cleanout day today. And the feelings around the locker room, same feelings as the fans. It's just heartbreak central. Gino, listening to A.J. Brown talk, Jordan Mailata, Quez Watkins talking about his down year, seeing the press conferences right after the Super Bowl too with Jason Kelce and Jalen Hurts. It's tough. You can tell this was as heartbreaking for them as it was for the fans. I mean, losing in that kind of fashion in the Super Bowl is just, I thought about it the other day. I don't know how fans that were like our age or older got through those early 2000s where this happened year after year after year. It's eating me alive still. And it's only been 2 days, but man, this is it's tough to swallow. Holy cow.
Oh, I was 10 years old. I remember that feeling. It sucked. It feels just like it is now. And my fiance only became a fan when we got together 10 years ago, and she lived through a Super Bowl win. And I asked her yesterday, I go, how's it feel to live through a Super Bowl loss? And she goes,
it's way harder. It feels way worse to lose than it feels good to win. Even a Super Bowl, Gino. And I thought maybe the 2017 ring would help if they ever got there and lost because you already won one. I don't think so, man. It feels just as painful.
It definitely does, but imagine. Just imagine.
Right, imagine if that, because it did go exactly as the 2017 Super Bowl. Imagine if you lost this way the first time, it would have hurt even more for sure. It makes you honestly appreciate Super Bowl 52 because you look at the way this season went up until literally the end of the Super Bowl. It went the exact same way script-wise. You just ended up in a loss. It would have been like if Tom Brady pulled it off in that game.
Right.
And so I think it makes you appreciate 2017 because of just how hard it was to get that thing done.
It makes you appreciate just how great everything went, like how flawless everything went.
Magical it was, yeah.
And how those mistakes came back to bite you this time. And if you go back to the Super Bowl when Donovan played, through 4 turnovers, 4 interceptions, and they lose by 3 points. It's like you have to be that good. You have to be that flawless.
Every little thing has to go your way. You have to have that Brandon Graham strip sack. You have to have that 4th and 1 conversion. You have to have this insane touchdown triple coverage to Corey Clement.
Yeah, the Corey Clement call to call it a touchdown versus Devontae Smith right before halftime.
Yeah.
That catch, if that's a catch, Lou, are they in a position to where they could score a touchdown?
Or if Quez Watkins doesn't drop the ball. You look at so many insane grabs that Nelson Aguilar made in that game and Alshon Jeffrey that went the other way in this game. It's unbelievable, Gino, how similar those two games were and how there were just a few moments that were missing that happened in Super Bowl 52. As you mentioned, the Devontae non-catch versus Corey Clement's catch. There wasn't that Brandon Graham strip sack, and there wasn't that 4th down conversion in your own territory. And as you mentioned, it's those little but big moments that are all the difference when it's the 2 number 1 seeds and it's 2 elite quarterbacks just exchanging blows like it's King Kong versus Godzilla, just like it was Foles Brady.
Look at what Foles did in that game too. He threw an interception. Let's remember that big bomb that tipped off the hands of Alshon, and that flipped the field. They go down and score, and all of a sudden you're saying, could this come back to bite us? Well, you look at just how close, Lou.
Yeah.
Kenneth Gainwell, if he picks up that 1st down, do they even get into that scenario with the fumble? Like, is that even one of those considerations? And that just shows you how a game of inches, it's always said by these commenters on the game day, it's a game. It truly is a game of inches. It's a game of margins. It's a game of fractions, just making sure that everything goes right. Look at the Eagles. They go 2 for 2 on 4th down. They have a great day on 3rd down. But situationally, a fumble return for a touchdown isn't going to get it done. That 4th down when it should have been your 3rd time going for it in that game, 4th and 2, just like Zach Ertz in 2017. You had to take that risk. You knew the guy that was on the other side of the ball was Patrick Mahomes, who was probably going to make you pay. Yep. That's one of those decisions that will always sit bad in a very bad way.
And I think that's why, I didn't love that A.J. Brown said it today, but he was being real, and that's who Brown is. He said when the Eagles had to kick a field goal, so they started the second half up 24-14. They're up by 10 points. The Chiefs score on the first drive. The Eagles march all the way down, but they stall in the red zone as they did a few times in that game, and they had to settle for a field goal going up 27-21. AJ said at that point, I knew we were going to lose. And yeah, I mean, that is the difference. And it makes it a lot harder to swallow, Gino. I think it's a worse feeling than a blowout loss in a Super Bowl because there were so many things that did go your way. If you would have told me that Jalen Hurts had 4 combined touchdowns and over 300 yards from scrimmage, and the Eagles score over 30 points, I would have said, oh my gosh, it happened again. And the fact that that didn't result in a win is just, it's heartbreaking. I'm trying to, think about all the positives that happened this year, all the amazing memories, the fact that you have a 24-year-old quarterback that was capable of that in the Super Bowl. But because you were so close, I keep thinking of what it would have felt like if they won, which makes it hurt more. So I'm struggling, man. I know we got to get to this offseason stuff soon, and we will, but I think it's still a mourning period for everybody, including the players.
I'm like weirdly at peace with it because 04 was like this same feeling to me. 04, what was this, Louie?
Is it just because you're used to it? That sucks if that's the case.
Like I remember the early 2000s so vividly and that feeling of being right there. But
yeah, see, I think I was too young. Maybe that's part of
it. And maybe it's me growing like a little bit wiser as I get older, not like getting so emotional with it that like
that's a good point too.
You have to look at it and say, you have to respect the hell out of what the Chiefs did because if you got that performance, we would be having that same discussion that they're having at Locked On Chiefs, that they're going to remember this team forever. They made those plays when it mattered. Mahomes doesn't go for 400
That's
yards.
Why it hurts because I want to talk about that stuff so bad. I want to talk about that 2-point conversion, how Jalen Hurts had 3 Chiefs hitting him at the 2, and he finds a way to push it in to tie the game. 5 minutes left on the biggest stage. I want that moment to be remembered forever. And I feel like I kind of, in the Bills to a lesser degree last year because it was the divisional round and they never got back. But I get what they felt when you wanted that Josh Allen performance to be remembered forever.
Right.
And now it's,
what if he got the ball?
It'll be remembered, but it'll be remembered as, yes, exactly. It'll be remembered as one of the best performances in a loss. You're going to see that, like, the NFL top 10s on NFL Network growing up. That's going to be in there, So it's tough.
I mean, EPA, they graded out, I forgot who it was on Twitter, but the game between these two, they were right at the top of any performance since I believe 06. So
one of the most fun Super Bowls you've ever seen.
Yeah, that you'll ever remember. And the reason why 04 was a little bit different is because you didn't have that performance from Jalen Hurts. I mean, the defense still played their rear end off, right? But those moments you're talking about, there's so many. T.O., we had this great season from Terrell Owens, and it's like, I forget about it so blatantly.
No, it's a good point, though. It's a broken leg in a Super Bowl, and the guy totally balls out, and 100%. You can't really celebrate that with a ring.
No, you don't have the end result, but I hope, and the guy leading the ship, right? It's Jalen Hurts. He had that same feeling his freshman year at Alabama. He leaves the field, puts his team on his back, and he just needs one stop. And if anybody knows how much it is to get that ring and to lose that ring, it's this guy. And if there's any like shining light off in the distance for, I know, the city of Philadelphia and everybody around the team, it's a gray cloud. We know that. But remember a couple years ago, or last year rather, when we didn't have any sun in the sky, like there's that kid, Jalen Hurts, who we talk about, the Josh Allens, the Joe Burrows, why they're always in that conversation to be there year after year.
Yeah,
it's QB1, and we have that guy, Lou, and that performance should show you
it was
what
legendary.
That future can bring, man.
And we'll continue to get into it in segment 2. I want to talk about Jalen Hurts, but last point, on this overall feeling 2 days after the loss, it really does make me appreciate 2017 because
100%.
Everything I wanted in this game, we truly did get in our first championship. And so there's a little comfort in that, but I wanted that same feeling for this team because this team was so different and there was just so much that we overcame over the past few years, and wanted to do these recap shows and, still love the show to death and doing the off season, but it's going to be hard, man. I think about I hope that next year we're not just thinking towards like, just get me to January, in the whole regular season. You're thinking that. And maybe that's how they felt in the early 2000s is, yeah, this all feels good, but what's going to happen when they get back to the NFC title? That's what starts to happen when your team goes from good to great. So the feelings right now are definitely conflicting, but we'll continue to work through it. We got 5 shows a week to do that for sure, all off season long. I want to talk about Jalen Hurts though, a little more, Gino, coming up next, because that performance was one of the all-time great performances in Super Bowl history. Guys, today's episode of Locked On Eagles is brought to you by BetterHelp. When you're at your best, you can do great things, but sometimes life gets you bogged down and you may feel overwhelmed or like you're not showing up in the way that you want to. Working with a therapist can help you get closer to the best version of you, because when you feel empowered, you're more prepared to take on everything life throws at you. If you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, flexible, affordable, and entirely online. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. If you want to live more empowered life, therapy can get you there. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. We thank BetterHelp for sponsoring the Locked On Eagles podcast today. We thank you for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Hope everybody's hanging in there. It was a tough loss on Sunday. We'll try to remember the good for sure on this podcast. We were once known as the Positivity Pod, so we'll try to, keep that reputation going, because there's a lot to feel great about. And Gino, we mentioned it at the end of segment 1. That performance, I rewatched Jalen Hurts' plays in that game, and honestly, I think this was the best performance of all time in a Super Bowl loss. Patrick Mahomes himself, the Chiefs couldn't help but hype this up and not let people forget what Jalen did, even in their own win. I've never seen that really before. And the Eagles saw one of those performances on the other end when they beat Tom Brady, who threw for over 500 yards. But the throws that Hurts made in that game, the plays with his legs in the clutch as well, compared to what Brady did, I'd say this performance was even better. And that's also why it makes it so hard, because what a literal storybook ending that could have been, where all offseason I said I never would think Jalen Hurts could do what Mahomes and Allen did in that game, and he literally did it in a Super Bowl. Incredible.
Yeah, there's this one tweet that I fired off in the anger of last season that it was like, Jalen missed a throw in the red zone a little bit high, and I'm like, I bet any quarterback in the 2024 class could make that throw, or 2023 class could make that throw.
Well, that was the reality of the time. That's why it makes it even more incredible, Gino.
And then you see that throw to the throw to Dallas. Can we just appreciate that? The throw to Dallas Goedert, Lou. Let's just understand that. So breaking that down, that's your basic cover 2. You have a 2 high safety. That whole shot is open from about 10 to 14 yards. You get that tight end right at the sticks, and he's going to try and go above the corner, below the safety. Dallas Goedert dominated all game. He looked like somebody under the rim that was just getting the ball and just going and
that entire big three did. Devontae Smith and AJ Brown combined for over 170 receiving yards and a touchdown. That big three was incredible.
So then that play, he had trusted Goddard all game to make those 50-50 catches. He was going up there. He was high pointing it. He was looking great. He puts that ball, Lou, in an area that's probably no bigger than the size of an NBA basketball rim.
Yeah.
And Dallas Goedert, with the situational and body control to make that catch, man, the next gen numbers said it was like 48% chance that thing had the chance to get completed. No way. There's no way it was anywhere near 48%. That's a high quality throw. When you talk about the throws that make you a good NFL quarterback versus just a college quarterback, that's that throw all day. And that makes you in the upper echelon. He's the best quarterback in the NFC. I don't think there's
it's not even close. And that's part of why I'm feeling really positive still, though, moving forward, is you have a 24-year-old that was capable of making those throws. I mean, look at the Quez Watkins throw, too. He had a free blitzer right in his face, and he delivers that on the money if Quez keeps running. I mean, that throw to Devontae down the sideline, the A.J. Brown touchdown, even the play where he has to roll out left, and then it's a spin back around, throw across his body on third down. I'm like,
I know you lost your mind. That's Lou DiBiase.
That's the Lou DiBiase quarterback.
That
play.
Is, I mean,
Lou,
you talk about the willingness to invest in a guy like this, to where that looking back on it, that his ceiling was this high. And that play to me was the one where it's like, damn.
That's everything
like
I've
Nick,
wanted in a quarterback.
Nick Foles doesn't even make that play.
Where he can roll out one half of the field and go all the way to the other side and throw across his body on 3rd and long. That was everything this offseason. I said, this is what I need in a quarterback. Can Jalen be that guy? It wasn't just that. The 1 3rd and long too, the Dallas Goedert throw over the middle on the left. I mean, the amount of 3rd and 4th down conversions this guy had was incredible. And yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. He's going to run the NFC. I mean, I feel very good about this team getting back there where it's not going to be the Atlanta Falcons where this kind of collapsing loss defines them for, the next 5 to 10 years. I think they're going to get back there. And there's not really an NFC team outside of the 49ers that I'm concerned about. And their quarterback future is so up in the air.
Yeah, it's Jalen and everybody else. And there were just so many times, Lou, and I get this feeling every time I watch a game. And I remember going back to the Bradford years, and it's like, you just never had confidence. You never had confidence. Like watching it, you're like, they're not going to pick up this 3rd down. When they trotted him out there on 3rd and longs, 4th down, how can you not trust the guy? He's the pilot taking you through turbulence when everything goes awry. I mean, look at that drive, Lou. After he fumbles it, it's a tie game. Everything could snowball. You could let the
and it's like it didn't even happen. No, I mean that kind of composure is unbelievable.
It's true. It's truly remarkable. And I know it'll be tough to remember this game, but that individual performance should make you feel so good going forward because
PFF Gino said it's the 2nd highest graded performance they've had in a Super Bowl since they started grading in 2006, only behind Nick Foles. Yeah.
Really? Oh my goodness. I mean,
and it's the highest passing grade ever given in a Super Bowl ahead of Foles.
What could have been with some of those plays too? Like how good is the performance if they count that Devontae catch and he has a chance to go to the end zone? And how big is that Quez throw? Like that makes it even more just remarkable as it was. And the plays with his legs, Lou, that's who he is. Like you can't take that away.
About how good it was.
I know, but you can't take that away from him. And that's one of the things that just moving forward, like this is the floor now. Like that performance to me, it's like I know any given day he can battle with the elite of the elite quarterbacks. And that was the biggest question mark going into this year. Did they have to use that number 10 pick to take a guy to replace him? Or now can they use that pick to continue to build around this guy who had an all-time great performance?
It's unbelievable how much a year changes where now I'm like, give him $50 million a year and I wouldn't even bat an eye. That's how much I believe in this guy now. It's just unbelievable.
Give him the key to the city. Give him the key to the city. I don't even.
And it's tough. You see that picture of him walking down the field in the confetti. But again, I trust if anybody's going to take this as motivation versus the opposite where it destroys a guy and it won't get out of his head, it's Jalen Hurts. I mean, even that's the amazing thing, Gino, about this team too, is look at the 49ers, how they were complaining literally for 2 straight weeks about every excuse in the book why they lost. And then every time the media, even right after the game, in the heat of the emotions they were feeling, they asked about the James Bradbury call at the end. They asked about the turf. And while these things definitely impacted the loss, for sure. I mean, it definitely played a part in your historic pass rush, not getting to Mahomes at all when they're slipping all over the field. But not a single player, including Jalen, used that as an excuse. Every single one of them either said, yes, it was a penalty. The grass wasn't, we had plays we can make. That composure and just responsibility and maturity made me pretty proud of this team because San Francisco took the opposite approach for an entire week, and they're still doing it. They're still like, as if that game validated something for them. Like, see, we would have beat them. I mean, it's just, ridiculous.
That's the Shanahan mentality. That happened to him when he lost that Falcons game. That will be forever ingrained in who he is as a coach. And I don't think this game, much like Jalen says all the time, one game just doesn't validate who you are. And I don't
either win or you learn, right? Is what the quote I think you said.
Always. And with that quote, I think you have to add you either win and learn or you lose and learn, because there's coaches like Andy Reid who have won big games and have learned that you have to continue to evolve or you will just stay stagnant. And that's the thing about this Eagles team is I truly believe that they'll evolve, look back and say, okay, we know where we are. We know where the floor is. How can we close those margins down? Get some oil on that squeaky wheel and figure things out to get this ship moving forward in the future.
Gino, we got some news about both coordinators, Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen. We'll wrap up the show with coming up next. It's a Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles.
before we finish up this episode of Locked On Eagles. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at Built Bar. We love Built Bars. I have a new box coming in today. I've been tracking it all week. I can't wait for them to get in. I got the churro. Make sure you check out either churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, any other original flavors that we've been preaching from the heavens for years for these things. They're so good. And the reason is they're delicious and they're healthy. And it tastes like candy. It doesn't taste like you're eating just one of those chalky bars you get when you go to a gas station. No, this thing tastes like you're opening up your favorite chocolate bar. It's 100% real chocolate with none of the guilt. 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 17 grams of protein. Go to built.com today. Or if you want to get them in a hurry, go to your local Walmart where you could get the 4-pack box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. Or if you have a membership to Sam's Club, go there to grab the 13-bar box with brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later. Go to built.com today to pick up your favorite box of Built Bar.
All right, we're wrapping up a Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles, 2 days removed from a devastating loss in Super Bowl 57 to the Kansas City Chiefs. But, Gino, the offseason moves fast. You know, that's the thing about the NFL is it doesn't give you time to mourn. It's time to look forward to free agency, and the NFL draft is only in 2 months, in like 8 weeks. It's ridiculous how much. I mean, luckily for us, we were in the Super Bowl, so, you know, we are behind for sure, but the news starts pretty instantly. And we got that already. Shane Steichen officially announced as the Indianapolis Colts head coach. So I would imagine Brian Johnson will be the new offensive coordinator. And then when it comes to Jonathan Gannon, Gino, I don't know how he's getting interviews after that game on Sunday, but it sounds like the Arizona Cardinals are very interested, and the Eagles are trying to convince him to stay. So I don't love that news, and I hope he goes to Arizona. Gino, to me, I kept going back and forth this year. Like, am I wrong about Gannon? This team is number one in pretty much every category on defense. But then the minute he played an elite quarterback again, he showed me he is the exact same guy as he was in 2021. And honestly, my conclusion now is a historic personnel on defense covered up who he really is. And I truthfully don't want him back next year. I know the grass can always be greener, and this defense did a great job this year overall, but he's just not the coordinator I want. I think I've concluded that after that loss.
I made this analogy on Twitter with a Lord of the Rings scene yesterday, but I'll do it with Star Wars today. The Eagles defense was the Death Star, right? It was big, large, imposing, one of the great units of all time. Every time they stepped on a field, the quarterback across from you should have felt like, hey, there are some guys to worry about, right?
Yeah.
But the Death Star had this little, it's like a 4x4 square that left it susceptible.
Okay. Yeah.
Completely blown.
It's like a self-destruct button. Yeah.
That was Jonathan Gannon. That 4x4 window, it was always there. It was just who was going to be the person that had the stones and had the knowledge to figure out that, hey, there's a weakness in this defense. That was Andy Reid. Andy Reid was the Luke Skywalker of this situation that took down the Death Star. He came in there with all of his knowledge, all of his wisdom, and showed you who Jonathan Gannon truly was. Was he a guy, much like you grade your quarterback and your players, Lou? Is Jonathan Gannon a coordinator you win because of, a coordinator you win with, or a guy you win in spite of? Man, it felt like they were trying to win in spite of Jonathan Gannon in that.
Gino, I don't think it's a coincidence that the minute this historic pass rush could not get to the quarterback with 4 because they were slipping all over the place, and also just they weren't performing at the same level they were in past weeks. The minute they needed to scheme pressure, the minute they needed their coverage schemes to help them against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, that's Jonathan Gannon kind of stuff. He's got to help in those situations. He was nowhere to be found. That is a coordinator heavy type of game where, you know, considering the circumstances, you needed him to come through against one of the best play callers in the history of the NFL, if not the best. He is a top tier guy. He's on the Mount Rushmore, Andy Reid, that is, in that category. And he was just nowhere to be found. And again, I know it's difficult when it's Mahomes and Reid. I'm not taking away credit from Kansas City. What they did was masterful. And this is maybe the new Belichick Brady. It's incredible. But at the same time, that doesn't excuse what I thought was a awful job from Gannon. And so, I don't know who would be the next coordinator if he gets the head coaching job in Arizona. I know they would want to keep a lot of their same philosophies and base defenses and, overall scheme intact, but I don't trust him. I lost trust in him in the moments now, because now, Gino, it's about the playoffs. It's about getting back to January, the Final Four, the Super Bowl. In those moments against the best of the best, I don't think he's the guy for that job.
There's a quote that came out, I believe it was from Eric Bieniemy, that said they picked up the play, which they called, was it corn dog? I believe Andy Reid called it, where they got Sky Moore out there and Kadarius Toney scored on the same play. But they got that from Doug Peterson when the Jaguars played the Eagles this year, and Jamal Agnew ran that same exact route, and he got how the Eagles failed to check to that. And what the Eagles should have done in that situation is banjo the coverage. So what that means is that you're playing man, and if there's two defenders, the outside guy will take the guy that releases outside, and the inside defender will take the guy that releases inside, so there's no confusion on man. Well, the Eagles failed to self-scout back to that play, how they failed to do that against Jacksonville. And if Andy Reid, the wizard of the NFL, was going to use your coverage checks against you, you should have known that this was going to come.
Our old boys ganging up against us, man.
Yeah.
Doug 100%. And Andy.
And how do you not check to banjo that second time around when they ran the same exact jet motion later in the game, which scored a touchdown?
Because, Jonathan Gannon doesn't learn from his mistakes. He doesn't adjust.
No, he does, and that was so evident. It was one of those things. If it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, smells like a duck, eats like a duck, and you're telling me it's a chicken, no, that thing's a duck, and that's Jonathan Gannon. He laid an egg. He laid an egg. I know you could get into the pass rushers couldn't get there with the grass, blah blah blah, but you have to know your coverage checks. You have to be the most self-aware person in the building about your own scheme.
And again, we weren't asking to shut out Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. We were asking for one stop. Even Jim Schwartz's defense, as much as I couldn't stand him at times too, they got the one stop they needed. This time, they didn't get a single stop in the second half. Every drive in the Kansas City had resulted in points, right?
Yeah, 100%. Besides the one at the end did. Yeah, they kicked the field goal. And it's just really unfortunate because you did have all of these playmakers, and it's like, if he couldn't do it with those guys, much like if I look at
what's he going to do next year when you lose James Bradbury?
Right.
And,
it was like Mike Groh. It's like Mike Groh, dude. Like we were saying, this offense has so much more, but Mike Groh is just holding them back. I think this defense should be way better situationally. Yeah. And those big games that you look back over the last 2 years and you're like, oh yeah, we should have saw this coming. Like he never did a good job against good quarterbacks. And we tried to cover these faults up by saying, yeah, it's a great defense. But then you look back and you say, yeah, these old things come back to haunt you. This was that was the leak in one of your rooms that you just let go. And then all of a sudden the floor caved in. And that's exactly what happened.
Gino, it's 2023. It's very hard to stop elite quarterbacks in the NFL. That's a fact.
No doubt.
But there are games where defenses do get the best of those quarterbacks. The Eagles, it's not like, again, the majority of the time, Jonathan Gannon's defense against an elite quarterback, not going to do as well as they normally would. But there hasn't been one instance in 2 full seasons now where he has had any answer against a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. Even a guy like Dak Prescott, who I think is right on the outside looking in, that kind of player has shredded the Eagles. Like, let's be real. Dak Prescott, I don't think is an elite quarterback. I think he chokes in the playoffs and he wouldn't be my guy, but even a Dak Prescott level quarterback has always had success against his football team. Gannon doesn't have one example of where I should trust him in those moments. Even in the playoffs this year, you beat Daniel Jones and Brock Purdy. So you don't have that example. You just don't.
Yeah, and it was like with Jim, it's like we kind of knew that even if they did go crazy, that it was going to be the offense that ultimately won the game. And we were like, okay, one stop. Like we were saying the same thing. Like you just need to stop Tom Brady one time. And it's in the biggest moment of the game. And
and this time there was better personnel to do it.
Yeah. And how could I have any sympathy for Jonathan Gannon when Mahomes goes for $187 and you lose that game?
And he's
Tom
hurt,
went
by
for
the way,
505.
Yeah,
how does he get that? Lou, how does he get that scramble at the end of the game? How do you not know that that's coming? The guy has been shredding you with his feet, and you had no answer. You had to know that's coming. And Creed Humphrey even signaled. He gave Patrick Mahomes a little look on that one. He knew that they were going to play man, that they were going to be rushing the pocket. And boom, look exactly what happened. That's on your coordinator. Your special teams coordinator sent out 9 guys on an extra point after they scored that touchdown, after he allowed that big punt return too. So, hey, when only Shane Steichen, the guy who now left town, did his job and Nick Sirianni did their job, and the other two guys didn't, got that result, Lou.
Got that result for sure. We'll get into more. We've got a lot still to unpack this offseason. 5 episodes a week right here on Locked On Eagles. All podcast platforms you get the show. We're free and available on YouTube as well. And Always Talking Birds on Twitter. Let us know how you're doing. Check in with us at Locked On Birds, at DiBiase LOE, and at GC24_football. Thanks as always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. We're going to sign off. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase. We'll see you tomorrow. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening. And let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.